Welcome back to Open Window Politics. Today we're going to be going through a prediction between the former Secretary of Transportation in the Biden administration, Pete Buttigieg, versus the current Republican most likely frontrunner for the 2028 Republican nomination, as well as the current Vice President, J.D. Vance. So Vance is generally regarded as more likely to be his party's nominee in 2028 than Buttigieg is to be the Democrats' party's nominee, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. Not necessarily a prediction that either of these people will win their primaries, just a fun hypothetical election. So we'll start out in Nevada and then move eastward. So I'm going to start out with Nevada. I'm going to add a tilt rating. As far as Nevada goes, I'm going to put that into the tilt blue rating. I think this is going to be one of the easier states for Democrats to win back in 2028. This state did go to Trump in 2024. It was the first time it's voted red on the presidential level, at least for a little while. So that was an impressive feat by Trump and Republicans in general. They also have a Republican governor. They do have two Democratic senators, though, however, so generally they vote Democrat. And I think just with Hispanic Americans and other key voting demographic groups turning away from Trump, even though they were in some regards more supportive of Republicans and Trump in 2024, enough so that it resulted in a victory for Trump in Nevada. I just don't think that would ultimately be the same process today. So then I'm going to get to Arizona. In Arizona, I'm going to do it as a tilt red. I could very reasonably see this in the tilt blue rating. I think Buttigieg is a pretty decent candidate to run for the Democrats. He's definitely portrayed himself, or at least tried to portray himself, as more of a moderate. When he was running for president for the Democratic primary in 2020, he appeared on Fox News and did a town hall, and definitely has tried to portray himself as more of a moderate, and I think that would possibly result in a victory in Arizona. Right now, I'm just not quite as confident that he'd be able to do it, so I'm going to give that to Vance. But I do think Buttigieg would be a strong pick. Then we'll get to the other half of the Sun Belt. So as far as Georgia goes, I'm going to put that into the tilt blue rating. So that is going to be 16 electoral college votes for Pete Buttigieg. This state didn't go quite as far to the right as the other swing states did in 2024. Georgia also had some great elections for Democrats in the off-year elections in 2025. It'll be interesting to see what the Senate result from Georgia and North Carolina shows us in 2026 during the midterms. That could give us an indication of which way the state is leaning for the presidential level. But I'm going to call the state of Georgia for Pete Buttigieg. North Carolina, however, I don't feel quite as confident in putting in Pete Buttigieg's column. I'm going to put that into J.D. Vance's column, so that's going to result in 247 to 246. The district here in Omaha, I'm fairly confident that would be in the lean, possibly tilt, but could be tilt, but Harris was even able to win this district, and I think Buttigieg, with the much more favorable environment for Democrats at the moment, could expand upon that margin. And then that leaves us with the three Rust Belt states that will really be the ones to determine the presidency. So I'm going to start out with Wisconsin. I think this is probably the most likely state to end up in the Democratic Party's column. So that's going to be 10 more electoral college votes for Pete Buttigieg. Michigan and Pennsylvania, however, I think are probably more favored for Vance. I do think the election, I think if Republicans were to win a state in the Rust Belt, it would probably first be Pennsylvania and then Michigan. Ultimately, I think that the Rust Belt in this case is going to vote together. The Rust Belt voted together in so many recent elections. 2016, they all went for Trump. 2020, all went for Biden. 2024, all went for Trump again. So I'm going to put the remaining states into Pete Buttigieg's column. Both candidates have some Rust Belt appeal. Buttigieg, of course, was the former mayor from South Bend, Indiana, definitely in the region. And then J.D. Vance, of course, was a senator from the state of Ohio. So they've both got some connections to the Rust Belt that I think would be advantageous. Ultimately, though, just with the much more favorable environment for Democrats at the moment, I'm going to call it 292 to 246, a victory for Pete Buttigieg. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe.